Professional wrestling, a uniquely American art form whose timeless tales of good versus evil have touched countless generations of fans who have reveled in the ecstasy of the world's greatest form of entertainment. And sometimes it's really, really bad. This is the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast with Kyle and Jeremy.
Welcome, everyone, to episode... What episode is this, Jeremy?
It's episode 9.
Episode 9 of the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast with Kyle and Jeremy. I've been very excited about this, Jeremy. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had an episode. We've been busy. I've had comedy shows. You've had comedy shows.
Yeah, man. We've been out there working the streets, as it were.
Well, working the corner. We are the whores of the Kentucky comedy scene.
I am a filthy slut.
You are... Speaking of filthy... Hold on.
May want to work on your segue, brother.
That's a horrible... Let me change that segue. Speaking of beautiful ladies, we have... stories of your dating life in the couple of weeks that we've been away.
Everyone's been clamoring for it.
And we have an update. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the mystery lady you found at the gas station.
Yes.
You asked our listeners if they knew who this was. You have found her.
I have found her, man, with a little help from some listeners, right?
Yeah, so we're going to get to that after we get to the topic this week. And again, this is the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast. We discuss the absolute worst wrestling angles, storylines, characters, matches, pay-per-views of all time. Kyle Fields right here, Jeremy Sutherland across this big, beautiful room. Two former professional wrestlers. We are two comedians, two wrestling fans. Jeremy, this week, the most the most non-PC gimmicks of all time. The most non-politically correct gimmicks of all. Well, that's easy for me to say, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a mouthful. Well, the thing was, man, is I think you kind of stammered on it a bit because when we talked about this episode, if you'll recall, we originally started out with, the most racist gimmicks in professional wrestling.
Right, yeah, because we were going to talk about the most racist ones.
And then I said, we talked about, let's just call it the most ridiculous. And then we just kept searching for the term. So that may have been why you stammered on it a bit.
Right, yeah, but then ridiculous seemed too broad. And then I said, well, what about the most offensive? And then I thought, well, no, even though it's offensive to other people, I don't want to take the perspective that it offended me because
we don't want to ruin our street cred here because we're not easily offended. Actually, it takes way too much to offend people like us.
The only way that you can offend me is if you tell me that wrestling is fake. That's the only time in my life that I've felt something in my heart.
It's still real to me, damn it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Funk, for what you do to your bodies. That's another good episode in the future. We should do the best wrestling viral videos on the internet.
It's just the best wrestling marks in history.
Sign guy's got to be one of them. By the way.
Absolutely. Hawaiian shirt guy, the sunglasses from ECW Arena.
Well, I'm not even talking about sign guy from ECW.
I thought you were talking about sign guy Dudley.
No, I know sign guy Dudley, but there's WWE sign guy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, man, he was actually at Rupp Arena here in Lexington when WWE...
So this has been recent with wrestling then, with the WWE?
No, the past 15 years.
Oh, really?
Sign guy, is at... We'll talk about him later on, not this episode, but yeah, I mean, for 15 years, this dude has showed up on pay-per-views, and he always wears the same blue button-up suit or shirt, and he has a red backwards baseball cap. And as a matter of fact, he went on The Weakest Link years ago, obviously. It was the Weakest Link or whatever, but the people who supported him in the audience were Edge, Big Show, and Booker T.
That's impressive, man.
Yeah, I guess his backstory is that his wife died from cancer years ago, and he followed WWE as an escape, and now he's everywhere.
That's actually a really interesting story, man.
I have a theory that WWE now pays him as a plan.
He's on the payroll as a consultant or something.
Well, I don't even know if he's so much of a consultant, but
in as much as they were just searching for a title to be able to put him on the payroll or whatever.
Because I saw him here at Rupp, and I'm like, well, that's weird. I mean, this isn't a huge house show. It's not a Raw or a SmackDown or a pay-per-view. It's just a random house show, and he was there. But what I noticed was he was sitting in the front row, and I assume that he's probably been comp tickets for years.
Oh,
right?
sure.
But whenever there would be a rest hold or a lull in the crowd, sign guy would start a chant. And watching him, like, as I'm kind of higher up and I'm seeing him, and I see, like, watching an actual chant start is pretty wild. But he started so many chants, and it was always for the baby faces. It was always against the heels. So I wonder if WWE pays him to follow them across the country and, like, lead the audience in chants.
Yeah, it would be a brilliant move on WWE's part, because as long as you've got a guy on the payroll who's sitting out there who you're paying to actually do these chants that are, I guess, more productive than "this is bullshit."
Yeah.
You know, and you kind of eliminate that whole thing because you got a guy who's actually leading the audience into chants that are not only clean, that can be aired on episodes of Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
But, you know, basically ones that are kayfabe. Like, he's leading the kayfabe chants instead of, like, you know, "this is bullshit" or whatever.
And I mean, like you said, it makes total sense.
TNA should have done it, actually.
Yeah, well, I don't know if TNA could pay people to go to their arenas now.
Right.
And I feel terrible. Again, I feel awful, man. I mean, you know, ever since the past couple of weeks that we've been away, the news is broken that Destination America is probably going to cancel TNA.
Yes, I've heard that.
Coming up in September. So I guess they're going to leave them on the air. And barring any unforeseen spike in the numbers, they're going to be gone.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. And I've also heard a smattering of rumors online that Ring of Honor may be actually stepping up to potentially take the place. I don't know the veracity of that or not.
No,
but
it's no rumor. It aired.
Really?
Wednesday night. Yeah, it was 1 hour of Ring of Honor, 2 hours of TNA, followed by a replay of Ring of Honor.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. And they're not, that's what it was. And they're not new episodes of Ring of Honor either. They're the, like, reruns from the first run syndicated shows that we see.
Okay.
Here locally.
Yeah.
Apparently the numbers were decent, I guess. Not as good as they are on syndication, but again, you have to think that Destination America is seen by, 13 people who have it on cable?
Sure, yeah.
and honestly, and if you want to get tremendously off topic, and God knows we already have.
We never do that.
We never do that. If you, I think that broadcast television, Fox, ABC, CBS, NBC, is going to be far more important now than it has been for a number of years as more young people like you and me cut the cord. And
yeah.
Because I don't have cable, I have Hulu, I have Netflix, but...
I was going to say, I have every application there is known to man, none of which are local cable.
Right, but I have an antenna, and I watch local TV on occasion.
Sure.
So I think that's a huge boost to Ring of Honor.
I think you just do that, though, so you can see your big, handsome self on the local news and so on and so forth, because, I mean, you're a local celebrity. I mean, you did a bit about this, Kyle, on stage. And anybody who's anyone knows that you cannot take anything on the stage as a comedian if it's not 100% true.
Absolutely. How dare any comedian ever lie about anything they've ever said into a microphone? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I have been on local media, the local news promoting.
There has been, man. Every time I log into Facebook, man, there's a new photo of you doing local news on television with a different channel each week, man.
Well, let me tell you a secret. As much as I was hoping that the local news shows would help my comedy shows, I just did it for the screen cap.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, is it true? Now, I've heard a smattering about this. There's that word, a smattering again.
Smattering.
Of rumors online that you and Henry Earl are actually going to be getting a reality TV show together.
Henry Earl, for those of you who don't know, is actually a pretty famous international celebrity.
He is. I've seen him on TV that isn't local, too. Yeah. They've talked about him setting world records and such. We
are in Lexington, Kentucky. Henry Earl holds the world record for being arrested more times than anybody else, at least in the United States of America.
If not Earth.
Probably on the face of the earth. And no, that's not an exaggeration. Jimmy Kimmel actually tried to fly Henry Earl from Lexington out to L.A. or wherever they film. I think it's L.A. to have him on his show.
Yeah.
And he couldn't make it because he was in jail for weeks.
Here's the funny thing is that we actually record this podcast here downtown Lexington. We could literally walk out of here, walk out back, go one block down the street, and there's a good chance you could see Henry Earl just sitting right downtown at any given time.
Trying to bite his own face. I mean, that could happen. So enough talking to Henry Earl. Enough talking. I mean, how the hell did we get on Henry Earl?
I'd heard you were getting the reality TV show. I just, you're becoming a little too big for your britches.
Big for my britches. Well, our bitches. Wow. Our bitches are getting even bigger.
Yeah, they are.
Because we're gonna talk about the most non-politically correct gimmicks of all time.
That's right.
I'm bringing a list here. My original idea was to do a top 10, but there are more than 10, so I'm not going to number them. We're just going to go through.
Sure.
First one, Gold Dust.
Gold Dust.
Gold Dust. Now, I love Gold Dust in a manner that is probably far greater than anybody should.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Gold Dust mark.
I'm just a huge Dustin Rhodes fan. I was a big fan of Dustin Rhodes in the 90s in WCW.
Too. Oh yeah, I love Dustin Rhodes, and then he became. I remember because I was a kid when the Gold Dust character debuted, and I remember one of my friends was like, that Gold Dust is Dustin Rhodes, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, no.
I'm a big fan of anyone who's 6'6" and who can do a 1.5 flip out of a clothesline. I mean, that's pure talent.
Well, I mean, not just that, but the dude is literally aging backwards. I mean,
I think he is. He's got like the Benjamin Button disease or something.
Because he was a strong worker in WCW, and he came to WWF, and he was always a little porky because he is, after all, Dusty Rhodes' kid, right?
Yeah.
And like he, for a couple of years almost, or at least about 6 months when the Goldust character debuted, his matches were kind of clunky and they were kind of off the wall because he was trying to find himself. He was trying to find himself in the ring and readjust to this character that was the exact opposite of the good old boy Southern redneck that he had worked as for so long. But and he had his substance issues for a long time, and he talked about him in his autobiography. Speaking of his autobiography, since this is a podcast on the worst wrestling of all time, I love Dustin Rhodes, whatever you want to call him, Gold Dust, Black Reign, 7, which, by the way, Dustin Rhodes makes this list twice, which is quite an accomplishment.
Oh, nice.
But that is the worst piece of shit autobiography I've ever read.
Really? Yeah, I've never read it.
Well, because I bought it. I'm probably the only one, me and maybe Dustin's wife, but I bought the book because I'm a huge mark, and I knew that he had struggled with alcohol and drugs. I'm thinking this is going to be a good read. This is going to be it's his tale of redemption. It's written on maybe a 5th grade reading level.
Oh, that's terrible.
I mean, like, there are no complex sentences. It's about this thick, and I know that you.
So there was no ghostwriter or anything that kind of stepped in to take the pen.
No, that's the thing. And usually, 9 times out of 10, when I read an autobiography and it's ghostwritten, I go, "Come on, man, this is your life. How can you put somebody else? How can you put your life in somebody else's words?" Sure. This is the one book where I read it and went, he needed
really needed a ghostwriter.
Right. And but it's so tiny. It's like a pamphlet. And it's like, it felt like it was 50 pages.
Oh, man.
So,
that's kind of sad.
I know it is sad. But
people forget he's been wrestling for 25 years.
Forever. I mean.
And he's looked the same age from the day he started. He still looks the same age.
Well, I think that the gold makeup obviously helps him out a lot.
Well, sure, yeah.
But he does he works out every day. Now, I follow him on Twitter. I told you, I'm a huge Gold Dust mark. But he does he does yoga and all of this Pilates. He does Pilates every day, and he's in better shape now than he's ever been. And when he came back to WWE in 2012 or 2013, he was on fire and unbelievable, and he's still great in the ring.
Oh, sure.
So I love Gold. I met Gold Dust one time.
Oh, yeah?
I met him, and him and Booker T, by the way, my favorite tag team of all time.
Was he working you? Was he in Gimmick, or did you meet him out of character?
Actually, what happened was it was at a WWE show, but he wasn't working at the time. He was an agent. He's been fired from the company 6 times. That's not even an exaggeration,
sure,
I don't think. And he's walking in, so I'm like, oh, he'll get a real kick out of the fact that, this random guy, he's not in the makeup. He hasn't worked in a while. I'm going to say hi. And he's walking by me, and I go, hey, Gold Dust, man, I don't want to bother you. And then he goes, oh, thanks. And he's walked up. It's like, shit.
Yeah, thank you there for that. I'm just going to keep walking.
I don't want to bother you. Thanks. You're not even working, brother. You're not a heel, man. So... The reason that
perfect.
It was. The reason I put Gold Dust on this list, though, is not because he no-sold me when I tried to say hi to him
he no-sold you.
At a wrestling show.
Right.
Is because when the Gold Dust character debuted, it was clearly like a gender bending. It preyed on people's homophobia.
Yeah, it really did.
I mean, and you can say that it was this brave, gimmick because the character because obviously the man is straight.
Right.
And the character was straight, too. The character...
Ish, yeah.
Yeah, ish. I mean, like, the whole point of the character was he preyed on people's homophobia to get inside of their heads, which, if you want to get super meta about it, is a statement of homophobia itself. Right?
I thought you were going to bring up Bruce Jenner.
Bruce Jenner. I think even... The fact that nobody can
Caitlyn Jenner.
Nobody can make a joke about Caitlyn Jenner. I think that even extends to the podcast world. Like our podcast will be shut down by the liberal media halfway through if we make a joke.
That damn liberal media.
My favorite homophobic Goldust moment is when it was back on Raw, and we'll see if you remember this. Ahmed Johnson is knocked out in the back by somebody completely unrelated. And he's laying there on a stretcher like Mickey when he dies at the middle of Rocky III.
Well, you said he was knocked out. I was going to say, was Soma's? Oh, you mean like work knocked out. Okay.
No, work knocked out. Although, to be fair, it was Ahmed Johnson. I don't know. Yeah. I don't even know if those rumors exist. But he was a worker in the 90s, so I'm sure.
Right, yeah.
And so Goldust randomly happens to be walking by Ahmed as he's knocked out, and he looks at and he gives him mouth to mouth. And it works. Like, he brings Ahmed Johnson back to consciousness, and Goldust looks at the camera and goes, I saved him. But Ahmed wakes up, and he's got this gold makeup around his mouth, and he touches it, and he goes, damn! Like, it gets and then poor Bob Holly happens to be walking by, and Ahmed knocks him through a door. And the rumor is that, like Goldust was supposed to kind of barely touch him, but like he went full throttle. So when Ahmed woke up, he really was pissed that Goldust like stuck his tongue down his throat.
Right.
Oh,
that's funny, man, because that tells you how with it I really am. I mean, I would have never even bothered to mention Goldust as an offensive character. Like, shit just went over my head. Don't get me wrong. Like, everything you've brought up, every point you've made, it's completely made sense, and I get it.
Oh, yeah.
But just for some reason, Goldust would have never came up.
And I love the character. I'm not saying...
No, I do too. No, it doesn't offend you, right. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't offend me in the slightest, but I mean, like, he was a heel because he did gay things. I mean, that's... Like, he would go to the crowd, or he would at house shows, and I think this even happened at a pay-per-view one time when he was being booed. He would grab the microphone and he would tell the crowd, "Stop booing me, or I'm going to come out there and shove my tongue down each and every one of your throats."
Yeah, I think that says a lot about our society, especially about the people who are want to watch professional wrestling. Is that if someone's gay, they're automatically heel.
Oh yeah, and like they've really obviously gotten away from that.
That's kind of a commentary, I think, on modern society.
Well, speaking of gay, before we get to your next one, because I got to transition from this into this one, Billy and Chuck. Did Billy and Chuck make your list?
Yeah.
Oh, Billy and Chuck.
Actually, that's one of the. I mean, if you're going with, I guess, with like the homophobic. Kind of the homophobic exploitation. Yeah. Those two kind of they topped the list, I guess.
They did, man. Well, I mean, because this was and again, it was only about 8 years after Goldust, but it seems like towards the beginning of the 21st century, time exponentially increased as far as what was acceptable and what wasn't. But
right.
But if you don't know, Billy and Chuck were obviously it was Billy Gunn and Chuck Palumbo. Sorry. And
professional.
Chuck Palumbo had recently came over from WCW, and they were just a tag team. They were a couple of guys. That's what they were.
Right.
And then week after week, the two kept being caught in compromising positions. Like, they'd be helping each other, like, hey, let me show you how you escape this hammerlock here. And
they were like WWE's version of the ambiguously gay duo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And people would walk in, and then like suddenly they started doing their hair exactly the same, and they got matching trunks, and very slowly and not so subtly they became gayer and gayer.
They were basically like an ironic, because at the time when they were at the peak of doing what they were doing is when the whole world started to get like super ironic and hipsterish. So they were like basically the ironic version of the Fabulous Ones, or like a new age version of the Fabulous Ones without the irony.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this tag team too. And then they brought in their gay hairstylist Rico.
Oh, yeah.
Which, well, and again, I don't think it was ever explicitly said that Rico was gay, but it was obviously strongly insinuated.
Yeah, it was insinuated, or they just beat you over the head with it, just whichever. Yeah.
Right. Well, the funny thing about Rico, too, and we're going to get back to Billy and Chuck, but Rico was not in any way the character that he portrayed. I mean, like, he was in Ohio Valley Wrestling, the WWF's farm league, for a long time as this big, tough son of a bitch, Rico Constantino.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Cornette said that he was a can't-miss prospect. And I mean, we're talking a guy who was a Las Vegas police officer before. He won American Gladiators, years earlier in the 90s.
I didn't know that.
He was a member of the Power Team, and he was an amazing wrestler, and he was a good talker, and he had a great look. So you go, well, clearly this dude's at least going to be, an Intercontinental Champion one day, a strong, solid upper mid-carder, and instead they make him a gay hairstylist.
Well, sure, why not?
And then later on, and you know what, I didn't even think to put Rico on this list, but Rico totally belongs on this list in his own right, because after Billy and Chuck broke up, he went full gay with the character. he was pretty gay, and then after they broke up, he started putting makeup on his face, and he teased his hair way more, and he would grab the referee's hand and skip around the ring together.
Because that's what all gay guys do, after all, And
then Jerry Lawler would talk to King, he would ask him, Jr., do you think that Rico's really lighting the loafers? As if it's some sort of scandalous thing. You know what I mean?
Right,
do you think he's a monster?
Well, never ever once using the word gay ever. I mean,
oh God. They would say left-handed, lighting the loafers, all that.
Left-handed. That's
you never hear that. You never hear that.
No, you
anymore.
don't.
I mean, for good reason. Again, I'm not saying that homophobia.
Yeah, we're not advocating anything you hear today in one direction or the other. We're just here's this. We're going to present it to you.
Right.
Do what you will.
Well, I remember because he'd be like, "You think he's lighting the loafers?" And Jr., of course, very stoically and very, the straight man. No pun intended. He'd do the whole, King, I don't know. There'd be nothing wrong with it if he was.
Yeah. That's funny when Cowboy Hat Sporting JR is the voice of reason.
Yeah. So they Billy and Chuck bring in Rico as their gay hairstylist. And again, it had never been explicitly stated that they were gay. I think the gag was kind of like, they're not gay, but they look really, really gay. And then randomly on SmackDown, one of the guys proposed to the other. I don't know if it was Billy proposing to Chuck or vice versa, but he gets down on one knee and he has the ring, and then, oh my God, and he celebrates, and they hug each other, and they do the whole deal. And then they had the wedding, which the wedding is one of my favorite segments of all time.
Yeah.
You remember when that happened?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
And here's the thing, is that They do the wedding, and they taped the wedding on Tuesday, right? Because SmackDown at that time...
In Connecticut.
Right. What was it? Was it in Connecticut?
That was one of the first states to legalize.
Vermont?
Yeah, Vermont, yeah.
They tape it on Tuesday. The show airs on Thursday. GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, support this thing because apparently GLAAD has never watched a wrestling program in their entire lives.
I think GLAAD, or the GLAA, I don't know what the acronym's for. I think they get behind a lot of this stuff they probably really shouldn't get behind, just for the publicity for their organization.
I'm not going to make the obvious joke of you saying that GLAAD gets behind a lot of stuff. See, I'm not making the jokes.
You better be careful, brother. GLAAD's coming for us, man. You got to watch it.
Coming for you, brother. So Billy and Chuck appear on the Today Show on Thursday to promote their wedding on SmackDown that night. Again, it's already taped. WWF knows what is happening.
Yeah.
And a representative from GLAAD presents them with a wedding gift of a gravy boat. I'm not making this up.
Is there more of a gay metaphor than a gravy boat?
I know. So, but again, apparently GLAAD had never seen a wrestling show because
little on the nose there, GLAAD.
No wrestling wedding in the history of the sport has ever turned out just fine.
Yeah, it's never just been a wedding.
So they do the whole deal, and Billy and Chuck are in the ring, and there's an old preacher or priest or whatever who was marrying the two of them. And I love it because it was Eric Bischoff in this old man makeup. And they did like 6 different swerves in this one segment.
I had no idea that was Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, because here's how it goes down. They're in the ring, and then right before the priest, who we know now as Eric Bischoff, pronounces them as husband and husband, Billy freaks out and goes, No, we can't do this. No, we're not gay. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but we're not gay. And then Rico, who is the best man for both of these guys, goes, come on, we need the publicity. So it's revealed that Billy and Chuck are not gay. And before they even got married, though, when the priest asked, does anybody have a problem with this? The whole crowd, boo! Now,
an enlightened audience.
They object only on the grounds that it's 2 men getting married. Like, it's not like they
It's not that because they were heels or anything.
No, it's just because it was a gay marriage.
Oh, wow.
Which is, this is like 2002.
Well, the wrestling audience is not anything if they're nothing if tolerant,
No, we're not talking Memphis in 1973.
Right,
this is 2002.
And it's not even, it's WWE. They're supposed to be more the progressive style, I guess, in as much as their base of operations isn't located in Atlanta, Georgia. It's in New York.
And then Eric Bischoff.
Connecticut, I guess, technically.
Yeah, well, but they always say you're going up to New York, brother.
Right.
Bischoff tears off the makeup, and then he says, 3 minutes, and then 3-minute warning, who was his heel tag team at the time, comes down, and they fight. And then Rico switches brands. He goes from SmackDown to Raw. And then it was a great segment, but one of the most homophobic segments, at least in the recent history of professional wrestling.
Without question.
As terrible as it was, I thought.
Now I've got here's one that I came up with, and it's one of those ones I didn't really notice at the time because when this wrestler was popular, I might have been 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old.
Yeah.
Norman the Lunatic.
Oh yeah.
Do you recall Norman, who would later go on to Baston Booger non-fame in the WWF in the late 90s?
I believe
mid to late 90s.
I believe he was Bastion Booger. He was Friar. He was He was a Friar. He was Trucker Norm.
Yeah.
And then he was also a lumberjack.
Just a guy who could never really find his groove, you know what I mean?
He was a lumberjack that came to the ring with dancing bears at one point. That was
right.
We could talk about Friar Ferguson was the Friar gimmick.
Yeah.
Like we could talk about all of his gimmicks on one episode of this show. But,
you can make an entire episode out of Norman the Lunatic. Yeah, here's the thing, man. If you'll remember, I don't know if you were old enough to remember that or if you were watching wrestling at the time.
I know. If I was, I don't remember it.
Yeah, this was, I think, even pre-Bill Watts. He was brought in as Norman the Lunatic. He was supposed to be. He was brought out. I can't remember who managed him, but
Teddy Long, wasn't it? Wasn't it Teddy Long?
They originally brought him out with his doctor.
Oh, okay.
Who was supposed to be bringing him from the psychiatric hospital.
That's
a gimmick that actually I would later go on to use in the late 90s, but far more effective, more vicious, kind of less goofball. You know what I mean?
How sad is it that the gimmick that you used in a small-time Kentucky independent wrestling promotion was more effective than the one on WCW International Television?
The multi-million-dollar corporation. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And they billed him as they brought him in from the mental hospital, and he comes in, and he did all these really goofball things. He would go for a pin, and you would later on see Kamala do this too. He would go for a pin, and he would have them face down on their stomachs, and he would try to bend their leg back to pin them. Kamala did it for years.
That's right.
He wore two different. He wore like they were like sweats almost material, but they were supposed to look like the garb they would give you in a mental hospital.
Yeah,
he had 2 different color wrestling boots on, which Rick Steiner made popular in the 80s.
Yeah.
Here he would, he would do just goofy stuff like he would chew on the ropes and he would act afraid and silly and the reason it made this list, in my opinion, is that he wasn't a lunatic from an insane asylum. If given his look, his appearance, his general demeanor, the way he performed, everything he did in the ring, he was fucking mentally retarded. He wasn't crazy. He was mentally retarded.
Yeah,
if that's not, not politically correct, I don't really know what is to make fun of mentally challenged people. I don't,
Well, when you really think about it, and we're going to get into Eugene here in a second because he's on my list.
Right.
How many different, mentally retarded characters in professional wrestling have there been? There was George the Animal Steel, he was clearly a giant slow person.
Yeah, he really was.
That was his gimmick.
But they didn't really bill him as the retard coming to the ring
yeah,
at this time.
The retard coming to the ring.
Yeah.
Here's a great story about George the Animal Steel. When he wasn't wrestling, he was a high school gym teacher. And he would go, this is obviously back in the different territory days. You'd go wrestle in one city, one town, one circuit. Then you could actually go live a normal life only a few hours away.
Sure.
So he's in class one day, and one of his students brings a wrestling magazine up to him and goes, coach or, teacher, whatever, are you George the Animal Steel? And, it wasn't like he was wearing a hood or anything. He just was the same guy, right?
Now, if I'm not mistaken, he lived in Michigan. Is that right?
I think it might have been.
He was a teacher in Michigan, but he wrestled in the old Vince McMahon Sr. WWF.
Yeah, so it was
in the New York territory.
Right. But actually, all of the after mags, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the Wrestler, Inside Wrestling, the reason that, and a lot of people have made this argument, I think it's a really good one, the reason that WWF got so popular in the first place wasn't because the WWF, which later became WWE, was the best wrestling promotion. It was because it was in New York City, the biggest market with the biggest arena, and the after magazines I just mentioned were based out of there. So it made that promotion seem like a bigger deal than it actually was.
Yeah, it was just convenient for Bill Apter to cover basically a promotion that was right across the street.
Well, and it's also why that student in Michigan, you said, could get his hands on a magazine with George the Animal Steel.
There wasn't a lot of media that was worldwide that covered each one of the territories. Save for maybe Pro Wrestling Illustrated, there really wasn't a...
Right, and again, they were all based out of New York City.
Right.
So he brings the magazine up to George Steele, and he asks him, hey, are you George the Animal Steel? And George Steele goes, what, do you think I'm that ugly? And that's it. Well, I guess not. I guess he's not George Steele. That's obviously pre-internet days, but can you that can't exist anymore.
No, that's done, yeah.
I could fart on a dandelion in China. And people in, fucking Poughkeepsie know about it the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 seconds later.
Here's my George the Animal Steel story. He is a sweetheart. I actually got a chance to meet George the Animal Steel.
We dated for a number of years.
He's a really sweet guy, very nice guy, incredibly intelligent, which I know better. I know he's not really George the Animal Steel.
Right.
But growing up watching him in WWF, you just tend to kind of forget that he's not a complete lunatic.
Yeah, you buy into the characters, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very sweet guy. I had a very long conversation with him. I met him, and he even took a photo with me biting me on the back of the head.
Really?
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Again, the whole biting the back of the head, it sounds like you were romantically involved for a while.
Well, that's neither here nor there.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Thank you, Jay.
Wouldn't be anything wrong with it if it was.
Hey, you know what the gay community thinks you, Jay? They really do.
They do, and
the damn civil rights advocate.
That's right. He actually is. I think JR is.
But no, back to Norman the Lunatic. The thing about Norman the Lunatic is that they pushed him as a person who's mentally ill.
They did.
And when you watched him perform, and I remember it was this real moment where it clicked with me after seeing him on WCW Saturday morning and WCW Saturday night.
Yeah.
If you remember, at 6:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
There was the Pro, there was Main Event, there was Saturday Night, there was there was Wrestling. Actually, Wrestling Challenge was WWE.
Yeah.
There were so many. I love all the weekend shows. Now there's none. There are no other than Ring of Honor. There are no weekend wrestling shows.
Right. And you look forward to that, man. Sunday morning, Saturday morning.
I was a kid, bro. I would set my alarm. I'd wake up. I'd get my cereal. I'd sit in front of the TV.
I remember I would go to bed, set my alarm for 1 a.m. to get up and watch Saturday night main events.
Really?
Or midnight, maybe it was.
That was 11:30.
Was it 11:30?
It ran 11:30 to 1 a.m. But yeah, man,
I'd go to bed at 9 o'clock. Mom make me go to bed. I'd set my alarm and get up after she went to bed and watch WWF main event.
God, there was All American Wrestling Sunday mornings on USA. Yeah. There was Mania in the mid '90s with Todd Pettengill.
Yeah. USWA actually aired Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock.
Did it really?
So you could watch. You could have 3 hours of wrestling on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
You could watch WCW's program at 9, WWF at 10, and then USWA at 11.
That's right. Yeah, and then later it became the Pro.
Yeah.
Oh God! And then at noon, Worldwide aired here.
Yeah.
It was like 4 hours of wrestling.
Sunday was the best day for wrestling.
Why?
And it was perfect because I used to play hooky, so I didn't have to go to church, so I could stay home and watch 4 hours of wrestling.
I just got so excited for that. I
just got sad, but at the same time, I was hit with like a wave of sadness.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like I got excited, like it's 1996 for some reason.
Like you can't wait for this Sunday. So
shit, man.
But no, it really clicked with me. Watching Norman the Lunatic. Thank you, Norman the Lunatic perform.
Jeremy the Lunatic. Right
after
now.
A couple of weeks after they first brought him into World Championship Wrestling. It's like I'm watching a match, and this is maybe the 4th or 5th time I've seen him come out to the ring, and it's like, even at like 9, 10 years old, whatever I was at the time, I remember clearly going, he's fucking retarded. He's not crazy, he's fucking retarded.
I imagine a 7-year-old Jeremy say, he's fucking retarded.
Yeah, he's
like, for some reason you get a Bronx accent, he's a fucking retard.
I was thinking of Boston, he's retarded.
Yeah, that's what it was. He was, and you mentioned Kamala earlier, and I think that we should get into the racist gimmicks here in a few minutes too. But Kamala clearly a racist, African savage gimmick. But he was also, I think he was also retarded. Like that gimmick was a 1-2 punch. Like, it was offensive to mentally handicapped people and also to individuals who happen to be from the continent of Africa.
They're right, yeah, because. Well, and I never really considered that, but I didn't really take it as retarded. I guess I took it as like, well, he's from somewhere where they clearly don't have professional wrestling, so he doesn't know that you can't pin someone when they're laying face down in the ring.
Well, I think they did a vignette, and I have only heard about this, but I think it was like Slick or somebody took Kamala out bowling. He took him bowling. And
I remember that vignette. Yes, I do.
But it was supposed to be like they were going to unsavage him. I can't think of the word, but they were.
I know what you're talking about. They were going to kind of like introduce him to
society,
to civilized living, and so forth.
And the idea to do that was to take him bowling.
He's being integrated.
I miss shit like that, man. There was actually. It was on one of
I just miss goofy vignettes in general, really.
Too.
You don't get it anymore.
See, but we get shitty vignettes, and there's a difference. Like, there's a difference in the poorly acted, contrived vignettes on Raw now.
Right.
And, like, the goofy, over-the-top, stupid...
Poorly acted,
right, poorly, of the 80s and the early 90s. Like, because it was camp. Like, that's one thing that Vince does know how to do. And he acknowledged it back then. Like WWF, for the most part, obviously it did have drama and seriousness, but a lot of the character, it was all camp.
It really was. And that's very campy.
And that's why I liked actually NWA more, because it was more of a sport,
I was an NWA kid, yeah.
But at the same time, like, it was fun. Like, there was the one where
well, don't brush off NWA. I mean, if you think about a lot of the vignettes they did in the 80s, man. I mean, you look at I just look at any of them, really. I mean, they had their campy side too, but it wasn't as
the Fabulous one.
It did, yeah. Well, the Fabulous ones.
I don't think that was intended to be campy. That was.
It was intended to be sexy, and it worked. Damn it, it worked on every fucking level.
I tell you what, I gotta watch it before I go to sleep.
I'm a guy who's never really considered what it's like to be gay. I might jest here and there. But there's something about watching the Fabulous Ones vignettes, those music videos from the 80s. You put in the Gap bands, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, and you put Stan Lane and Steve Kern in a Speedo. You got one erected Jeremy, I'll tell you what.
One erected 5-year-old Jeremy.
That's right, man. Like, what is this growing in my pants?
What I love about that, too, is you say they played You Dropped the Bomb on Me. All through the 80s, they would play these themes that they clearly did not get the rights to. Right?
Yeah.
It was the Wild West back then, man. Like
it was.
I watched one with I think it was Rick Rude from Memphis or whatever, where they played I know the secrets that you keep when you're talking.
Yeah. The Steiners came out to Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah,
at one point. Yeah.
And I'm watching it with my brother, and I'm like, man, I can't believe they got the rights to that. And he's like, do you think they got the rights to that?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, they're not paying for that.
No, of course not. So yeah, you had Kamala, the Ugandan giant, and again, like, his whole gimmick was, hey, this is an African person.
Let's show the world what a real African's like.
Yeah, I was listening to Jerry Lawler on Austin's podcast about a year or two ago.
Right.
And Lawler discovered, or he pretty much discovered Kamala. Because before that, he was Sugar Bear Harris. You know, he had a completely different gimmick.
Yeah, Sugar Bear.
And apparently Sugar Bear came to Lawler backstage in Memphis one night. I guess the crowd didn't see him, and he came into the back door, and he was like, Mr. Lawler, I'm not doing the racist black man voice. This is how he talks, and this is how Jerry Lawler tells the story.
Yeah, no, that is important to point out, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, he goes, Mr. Lawler, my name is Sugar Bear Harris. And Lawler said he looked at him. He looked at him up and down and went, "Oh my God! Has anybody seen you? Come back next week." You know?
Yeah. I think I heard that episode. I remember him talking about that.
Yeah. You know, I got a buddy who is the biggest Kamala fan who ever lived. Right. You ever find those guys who are big fans of wrestlers that you would never think, like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like there are a lot of wrestlers who obviously, you know, like I'm partial to, but like you look at and go, you know, this
person has a diehard fan.
Like this is a diehard Kamala fan, and he's a worker, and he's worked for a long time, and for a while there he was a telemarketer, and he's going through, you know, like he's making his calls one day, and he sees the real name of Kamala, and I don't know, it's something Harris probably, and he looks at it and he goes, "Oh my God, this is fucking Kamala." and I guess like he had his occupation or whatever on there, and it was a truck driver. And for a long time, you know, after he retired, Kamala was a truck driver.
Yeah, Kamala's not really someone I could ever see doing like Make-A-Wish. Like no kid on you know, poor things on their deathbed or just, you know, dying to meet Kamala.
Right. I don't think so. So he picks up the phone. It's part of his job. He's a telemarketer, and he gives Kamala a phone call. And he says he answers, he's like, "Yes, this is blah blah Harris." Yeah. And he said he froze. Like a
guy who talks on the phone for a living 40 hours a week.
He talks on the phone. He talks into the microphone. He's been a worker at this point for like 6 years. He's worked some pretty big names, you know. And he was too scared to talk to Kamala.
Well, I guess we all get starstruck, man, on some level. There's always that at least one person that can do it to you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you know,
I just never thought Kamala would be that one person that could do it.
Can you expect being the biggest Kamala fan on earth and then randomly one day at your ass job, Kamala is the number that you have to call?
I would imagine that's very exciting.
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever get frozen, nervous to the point where I couldn't speak when it came to talking to Kamala, but, you know, to each their own, I guess.
You know, and you were talking about mentally retarded characters earlier, and we got to talk about Eugene. And
man.
And again, Eugene, the character, is not some kind of relic from yesterday.
Well, they were a little more on the nose with him being mentally challenged than they were with Norman the Lunatic.
Yeah, and you know what? And speaking of Norman the Lunatic, before we get to Eugene, my favorite part about that character was that he had an evil manager, and they kept him in a cell. The whole like character behind him was they would keep him like in a cell in a straitjacket, and there was a big novelty-sized gold key that dangled from a pole.
Yeah.
And like he always had to get the key, but the heel manager would take it away from him.
Yeah, that's so fucking offensive. It really is.
So Eugene, but here's the thing, again, all of these characters that we talk about, you know, all of these mentally handicapped characters, there was always some sort, like, you know, Norman the Lunatic wasn't retarded. He was a lunatic.
Yeah.
George the Animal Steel wasn't retarded. He was an animal, you know.
And Eugene's retarded.
Eugene was like straight up retarded.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't.
They even did like a like retarded strength kind of thing with him, like when he would like retard out and Hulk out and shit.
Well, he would do.
Can I possibly be any more offensive?
You know, he would all fucking retard out and shit. You
know they got that retard strength.
I remember CM Punk on commentary years ago for like Ring of Honor or some company. He said on color one time, he goes, "Yeah, he's got that freaky retard strength." Like I wonder how nobody ever found that and put it on YouTube. You know what I mean? Not that I care. I mean, I understand it's all a joke, but like,
right.
You know, people would get offended by that. Now.
Right. Well, we're the perfect ones to tackle this sort of episode, as we're that just 18 to 34 white bread. You can't even hurt our feelings. There's no way to really offend two guys like us.
You're right. I mean, yeah, it's not like, you know, I'm
like if you shit in my mom's hair, that's going to offend me, but nothing you can really say about, you know.
Yeah, it's not like, you know, we're a black lesbian and a Native American cripple who are. I said cripple. Good Lord. A cripple. Well,
ladies and gentlemen, maybe we can go back and edit in some kind of warning before we
have a Native American cripple. We're just going to keep this rolling. I don't care.
I was getting ready to ask you, did you cut the feed there for a second? Did you cut did you hit the stop button on the recording?
I said something offensive and trying to point out how we can't say, okay, all right.
Oh, man.
Where was I?
Let's take a second to get us back on track here. Shit.
Eugene.
Yeah.
Our point, my long-winded point is that Eugene was a mentally handicapped character, and that was the gist of it. And again, it wasn't like he was a relic from the past.
Which one of us is the Native American group?
Yeah, that'd be you.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be you.
You're the black lesbian. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's radio. They don't know. This is 2002. They introduced Eugene. I remember, and obviously Eugene was played by Nick Dinsmore.
Wonderful performer.
I'm telling you, man. I see, and again, we're in Lexington.
Big OVW guy.
So yeah, and you know, back then in 2002 and 2004, whenever it was, I think it was 0203. NXT did not exist, and then FCW was not the territory. Their big territory, the big farm league, was Ohio Valley Wrestling.
The Nightmares territory.
It was a little under an hour and a half up the road from Lexington in Louisville.
Yeah, yep.
And I got OVW when the wind was right on a Saturday night, you know, and if I put the antenna just right, I sound like I'm doing a I'm doing a...
What year is this?
I'm doing a promo. I'm sweeter than German chocolate cake. I would get OVW, and the big star, the big champ of OVW was Nick Dinsmore. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember Nick Dinsmore cut a promo one time because he had been in OVW for a long time before they brought him up. And right before they brought him up, he goes, the only reason they haven't brought me up there yet is because I don't want to sell out. I don't want to be somebody's brother. I want to be me.
Yeah.
And then like a month later,
he's Eugene.
But apparently he loved that character.
No, sure.
It got over.
And that was in the waning days of like a lot of at that time when OVW was kind of the farming ground, as it were, for WWE.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are big names now came out. Cena, Batista, Randy Orton.
Yeah. I remember they introduced
Rob Conway.
Bob Conway. Yeah, I love Rob Conway. Still local guy. Still locally wrestles here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And but the night they introduced Eugene, I'll never forget because I'm watching again with my brother, and Eric Bischoff is talking to William Regal, and they're both heels, and Bischoff looks at Regal and he says, listen, I'm doing this as a favor to my sister. My nephew, Eugene Dinsmore, wants to be a wrestler, and William, I'm asking, can you manage him?
No.
So
wow.
I'm watching and I go, oh, Dinsmore? Nick Dinsmore.
Right.
They're going to introduce Nick Dinsmore.
Yeah, they just changed his first name. It's fine. It happens, you know?
I was too optimistic.
Yeah, I hadn't put it together.
Maybe he's going to be a badass named Eugene. Yeah.
I like that was still the days where you were innocent enough to believe that WWE was going to bring up one of your favorites and not just completely fuck them up.
Oh, yeah, because now I'm as pessimistic as ever.
Oh, yeah.
So they introduce him, and he turns around in the locker room, and he looks at William Regal, and he goes, I'm Eugene. And I was like, no. I even remember I was 16, and I looked at my brother, and I went...
I'm sorry, you can't see this. Again, it's radio, but that face was hilarious.
I looked at my brother, and I went, he's fucking retarded.
Did you say it from Boston? He's retarded.
Yeah. How about them apples, huh? So they debuted him. But here's I'll say this about Eugene: as quote unquote offensive as this character is, as non-PC as this character is, they booked him masterfully well for the first few months he was there.
Yeah, he did real well.
Because he didn't wrestle for about a month. Like he would, he'd go because he was a child. Like that was his gimmick. Was he had the mind of a child.
Sure.
He had the childlike wonder, and he would play, and then he would hit the button. The pyro buttons and fireworks would go off.
Right.
And then
it's kind of brilliant. I mean, it's really a cool kind of
No, it was, but it got him over huge as a babyface. So he kept causing Rob Conway matches inadvertently, and Rob Conway was a heel at the time.
Yeah.
So Bischoff finally gets pissed off, and he tells Regal, he says, you know what? You're wrestling, your boy Eugene's wrestling Rob Conway. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to train him.
Oh, boy.
I love any time there's a timetable in wrestling. I really do. Because
you're going to see some good vignettes coming your way.
Yes, and it builds anticipation. And, brother, those vignettes were awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They did a training montage with, like, this knockoff Rocky theme, which eventually became Eugene's entrance music.
Right, yeah.
But when they did it, that's when they revealed that Eugene was a badass wrestler.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, his whole deal was he was like Rain Man. Like, he just watched...
Like the Rain Man of wrestling.
Yeah, like, he watched wrestling his whole life, and, like, he absorbed it all in, and he might have been retarded, but when he got in the ring, he was, and they even sowed the seed that, like, Triple H was his favorite wrestler, and, later on he'd feud with Triple H. And then so the next week when his music hits and Eugene walks down the aisle, there's Eugene signs, and people lose their mind, and he's super fucking over. And then William Regal, like, tried to cost the match because he hated Eugene, but he still won. And then as the weeks went on, Regal turned babyface because he slowly began to care for Eugene.
Right, yeah.
And Bischoff kept trying to fuck Eugene. It was
wonderful TV.
It really was. Like, it was masterful storytelling. It got Eugene over. It got Regal over more. It turned him into a babyface, and then they fucking killed it.
I was going to say, we're not here to talk about how good wrestling is.
Right. No, they killed it when they had Triple H wrestle Eugene, and he beat the shit.
He buried him, yeah.
Buried him. Cut his fucking legs off.
Oh, yeah.
So for all of the good that Triple H is doing in NXT right now, for all of the stars he is creating, do not forget
that he was a dickhead.
That motherfucker cut the legs off more guys than I can even name.
Without a doubt.
Especially in that tiny time frame.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was the world champion of Raw back during the brand
Not to mention
split.
banging the boss's daughter.
Well,
you're on a rocket ship to the top, brother.
Have you seen those tits? I think I'd be banging her
I'd
too.
bang her too.
Jeremy, I think we are 50 minutes into this thing. We're going to have to make this our first ever two-parter.
First two-parter with the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast.
Who would have thought that when we start talking about the most non-politically correct wrestling gimmicks of all time, we wouldn't have enough time to get them in an hour?
Yeah, because there's definitely not been very many.
And again, I didn't even say this. I want to thank everybody who helped us out with these, because a lot of these I couldn't, a lot of these were suggested by you at Obtuse Podcasts on Twitter.
Yes.
I asked a lot of you guys listening, I said, hey, what are some of the, most, non-PC gimmicks ever? A lot of these were suggested by you, so please follow us on Twitter at Obtuse Podcast. Also, like the Obtuse Angles Wrestling Podcast page on Facebook, always putting videos on there and pics and asking your suggestions. And speaking of Twitter, our listeners helped you out with a dilemma that you had a couple of weeks ago, right? They
absolutely did, man. They came through in fine fashion, which I didn't know the internet was capable of doing that anymore. So I'd like to say that I'm extremely proud and thankful of our fan base, man. They're a great bunch of so-and-sos.
Wow, that might be the most glowing recommendation I've ever. You're all a great bunch of. That'll do, pig.
That'll do. That'll do, pig.
No, we've gotten a lot of positive comments about this show, and I know a lot of time people blow smoke up your ass, and I'm sure people have blown smoke up our asses about this show. But the great thing is, we've heard good suggestions from people that I haven't even asked. You know what I mean? People who have just kind of started to listen, and obviously it's going to get better and better. And again, any recommendations? One more time at Obtuse Podcast on Twitter. But basically the situation was, in a 10-second nutshell, a couple of weeks ago you met a girl who was beautiful and somehow knew you, but you didn't know her.
Yes.
You didn't know her name. You asked anybody who was in the listening vicinity, which is actually internationally, but anybody who might live here listening for your help, and you found the girl. Now, have you banged her yet?
I have not banged her yet.
Yet. Not yet.
Yeah, with a strong emphasis on the word yet.
She's going to be so happy to hear this. Although
I was actually tweeted on my personal page from an Obtuse Angles follower on Twitter, and they said that they have the information that I'm looking for. It was very
was it very cryptic?
Yeah, it was very.
Did he meet you in a parking garage while wearing like an overcoat and give you a manila folder?
Well, the Twitter name was at Deep Throat. Very Woodward and Bernstein.
The information you're looking for.
So, yeah, they had a voice. He had a harmonizer on his voice and stuff when he spoke to me on the phone.
And in person, oddly enough.
Yeah, but no, he tweeted me and he said, I think I know who you're talking about. And I said, well, what the hell are you waiting for, man? I got to know. I
guess suckers got to know.
And they sent me a link to a Facebook profile, and I clicked it, and sure enough, man, right there from the profile picture, that was her.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very impressive, and I clicked the link and checked it, and I went back to tweet the person that did it, and their profile had mysteriously been
No.
No,
Oh,
I'm
God.
kidding. Did you get cold chills?
I did.
I gave myself cold chills.
That's like an unsolved mystery, motherfucker.
Yeah, we're gonna have Robert Stack cover that.
Oh, he's dead now.
Oh, that's sad.
Well, Dennis Farina. Oh, wait, he's also dead. It's not a good gig to be the host of that show.
It really isn't.
Oh.
Man. Yeah.
But so you're going to go on a date with her then?
I am. Yeah, we got to rapping a bit. Talked about how good it was to run into each other again.
To run each other?
I don't want to say
to run through each other?
Yeah, to run a train on each other. It was very nice to do that again.
Yeah.
We started rapping a bit, and I don't want to talk about how I know her because she is a real person, and I don't want to ruin my chances with her before I even get the chance, if you know what I mean.
But you told me this, you're going to be getting hotcakes. Right?
Yeah, man. We talked about somehow we got on the subject of breakfast and how much we love pancakes. We also talked about how pancakes are, you crave pancakes. They're like Vienna sausages. You get a craving for them, and then when you get them, you eat one, and you're just like, I don't want these anymore.
I have never in my life finished a whole can of Vienna.
I never have either.
And I guarantee you, anybody listening now who's not from Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Delaware. Anybody listening, Texas, not in that area, is going, what the fuck's Vienna sauce?
They're little cans of, it looks like they just put 8 of my dicks in a can. 8 Jeremy dicks in a can. They're awful, and you eat them raw. And sometimes you crave them, and then when you go eat them, you eat one, and you just don't fucking want them anymore.
You better hope that this mystery girl who you contacted is not a listener of the show, because I think you might have already ruined your chicken.
Yeah, well.
8 of my dicks in a can. Vienna
and the sad part is, penis is small. Don't know how to use it.
Oh, man. And I kill people, too.
Yeah.
It's the damnedest thing.
Well, that's what I told her. I said, look, you can trust me. I rape and murder very little.
Is that what you said, really?
Yeah, I rape and murder very little. No, we got on the subject of hotcakes and how delicious they sounded. I don't know.
That's got to be your nickname for her now. Is hotcakes.
Well, I don't know where I got a craving for pancakes. I either smoked an entire eighth or didn't before I talked to her. You take your pick.
Yeah.
We got on the subject of hotcakes, and we decided we're going to go out on a date and have a breakfast. And apparently, the stars aligned and everything was perfect. This girl's beautiful. I mean, she's gorgeous. Just a fine physical specimen. Just way out of my weight class, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Not physically, of course.
Right.
Because that'd be awful.
Man, you are just striking out with this one, aren't you?
I really am.
Out of my weight class, you know, I'm talking a super heavyweight motherfucker.
No, she's beautiful, wonderful, and intelligent. And as we talked about, she has a job and a vehicle.
There you go.
Yeah, she doesn't have any children. It's wonderful.
So we're going to come back after you go on the date with this lady, and we're going to be talking about how that goes. Also, you have some crazy sex stories.
Crazy stories. It's just dating life stories. We won't pigeonhole it into
right. We have crazy dating.
Some of them are, yeah.
But also, we're going to be getting to part 2 of the most non-PC gimmicks of all time, and boy, do we have some insane ones for you. So please. Click that like button if you're listening on Facebook. Let your friends know, because, again, the only way that we're going to be able to reach more people and get more listeners is by word of mouth. We have no cash for advertising whatsoever.
Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube.
At Obtuse Podcast on Twitter. Like our Facebook page. Please let your friends know. And with that, we are going to see you guys next week. Jeremy.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.